go, they commit even harder to the thought process and going, well, we did this that was a little too close to their interest. We go way out of the zone, something like Warhead or, craziness. Or you do, go with the tomb, go more towards your strengths. You back out of the thought process of Tempo Storm's weaknesses. You go, no, screw that. We're going with B-Step's strengths, and we pick towards that.
I agree. I think it'll be Tomb, unless B-Step decides that they'd rather have first pick so that they can make sure that they get the right pick. We'll have to find out, and we will right after this break. See you soon.
When I was young, I lived a life of recklessness. In my selfishness, I inflicted pain and hurt those I cared for. I have learned many lessons in my struggles with doubt and fear. Balance and harmony are not easily attained. They must be fought for! But on my journey, I have learned another lesson. You do not have to fight alone.
Let's do this!
Sombra, it's on you now.
I'm all over it.
See the full animated short at playoverwatch.com.
Tempo Storm is simply one game away from keeping their momentum going all the way to the mid-season brawl. And they would love to get a 3-0 just to set the tone for anybody else who might be watching them from afar, any other region, saying, see, we can dominate our region just like the other top teams in their regions.
Yeah, the fact that, one thing looking across the board, I guess not across the board of HGC, is the fact that it's very rare for, no matter how dominant you are within your region, to go undefeated. And the fact that Tempo has only dropped that one game, it is a very, this is my region, and that, their record kind of displays that. It's like, Tempo is North America, pretty clearly just the best team there.
Right, especially because it has been since part 1 that Tempo Storm even lost a series. And that was just to Gale Force Esports. And Tempo learned a lot, I think, from that match, especially, or as well as the Western Clash. They lost to Team 832, and since then, they have stopped making the types of mistakes that they have been characterized before in the past, things like getting caught out. They just don't let themselves consider it a win unless they play very, very well. They feel like they didn't make any punishable mistakes, and that, more than anything, is going to help them this time around internationally.
Yeah, it very much is. Tempo Storm is by far the most equipped internationally now than they have ever been. That being said, they when they have gone internationally, things haven't been looking too hot across the board. So still a lot of room for improvement for this group of players, but it is the best shot that North America's got by far.
Let's talk about some of the other teams who are going to be going to the mid-season brawl. We know that L5 will be there, so will be Fnatic. We've got Nomia representing Australia, New Zealand, and then from Southeast Asia, Conbox SEA. How do you think that these teams are going to do, having seen some of their games so far?
I mean, for when you say some of these teams, you're talking about the teams that have already qualified.
Yeah.
Out of those group of players, you know, a lot of L5 in the Korean region in general, honestly, those players have been pretty vocal of the lack of interest in North America or even Europe. They are very focused onto their own meta, so they probably are just like, do their own things. But for members like Nomia, I bet they're all over a lot of what these top teams are doing here in North America.
Fnatic looking good too. Now it's a matter of who joins Fnatic. Obviously Tempo Storm is joining Fnatic, but Team Liquid and Team Dignitas too. It's going to be a toss-up there, just like we have here in NA. We generally think it'll be Gale Force or Team 8 who ends up going, but these guys right here playing versus Tempo have a great chance of being able to shake things up, like Superstars 2 and Freedom. B-Step has picked first pick. They are changing their strategies this time, and Tempo Storm is taking us where else? Cursed Hollow.
The Cursed Hollow, unlikely to make it to the late game, very focused when it comes to the decision making. So tempo map, you know, and not obviously just in pick, but when it comes to the strengths of the map and the team traits, I do think that it's going to benefit Tempo. So this is going to be, I think, a really nice indicator of how much of this actually does come down to the late game or not, or how much of it is actual just pressure. Because I think Tempo will put a pretty sufficient amount of early game pressure on, and it's a hard map to delay if Tempo does it properly.
This is the third series in a row now that Tempo Storm has opted for Cursed Hollow over Towers of Doom when given the opportunity. So I think it's pretty safe to say that it might be their new favorite battleground, and it's easy to see why. They have a great understanding of just how much pressure they can apply to the lanes. It's a bigger battleground like Towers still, so they can do a lot with their globals, too, their Abathur picks, but then still show off their team fighting strategies with things like Greymane Abathur.
The one thing that I feel like Tempo Storm does a lot better than other North American teams on Cursed Hollow specifically is it does feel like they think about the next tribute before that tribute is there, right? And I mainly Gale Force is one that stands out to me at the top of North America that doesn't seem to think about what does this next tribute mean? Like, how far out is it? What is the circumstances of that fight? And then what is going to happen directly after? How severe is that, depending on the success or lack thereof into a fight? And Tempo has none of that. They are very quick to know the next 2 minutes of if things work out, this is where we're going, and if it doesn't, take a step back, stop the bleeding.
B-Step have been banning Anubarak versus Tempo Storm, but also don't want to deal again with the Abathur. Oh. Either one of them will end up being the ban.
Getting the old shake there. I would like to see not Anub, just because B-Step is the first pick, but also with the strength that Anubarak has at least displayed when it comes to North American meta, Anubarak would also be a must first pick. And so if B-Step doesn't want to pick that up for themselves, it doesn't fit to their playstyle, or maybe they just don't have too many comps with it, would be a smart ban out there, but they go the other direction. They're going to go with the Abathur, showing that they may have some Anubarak left in them. Just getting bumped in here, dude. Every time the Lucio song comes on, I note it. Every other one, tune it out. This one, just, I'm like, we're drafting.
Makes you happy.
It does. It's just that nice kick in of like this tone right here. Whatever that is, where they bring in the heroes kind of implemented. It's dope.
That's my favorite part of his 2 tracks too. So excited that they made those. It was a highlight of my Lucio release experience.
Dahaka banned out for Tempo, hinting towards focus onto the globals. And an early Zagara or Falstad coming out of Tempo Storm. Anubarak was locked in though for B-Step, still holding true that North America really, really likes our Anubarak.
But B-Step won't have Dahaka as a global to split Soak. That has been one of the main strategies that BStep have used to try to make sure that they can keep up with the macro game, especially for K1 Pro, and which heroes he's been willing to play. Maybe this means we'll see K1 Pro play Leoric. We've also seen some new Barak from him.
Tempo, Zarya, Cassia. That is a very interesting rotation, considering the emphasis put into some of the globals between the Abathur and the Dahaka, and kind of just opting out of all of that, going way more skirmish focus here. I thought Tempo would commit at least one of those two picks to more meta-ish or at least globals. And so now they're going with not only what is more of a new meta-ish with the Cassia priority, but they're not even going to have a global for themselves. I thought it would be like a Gray Main and a False End. I was like, that's unlike Tempo Storm to do that, but it gets that global and it still gets the skirmish power they wanted.
Tempo did that largely versus Gale Force. They still had Dahaka, but they had a triple warrior Cassia composition and dominated every possible team fight versus Gale Force. Granted, there weren't a lot of team fights that game on Cursed.
Yeah, Gale Force was, we'll say, passive a lot of the time in that game, not allowing for too many 5 versus 5s, but the Genji and the Chromie for the prep. BStep here's going in there with the, what is his, is he a samurai? Is that what he's going for?
He is
he a ninja?
Cybernetic ninja, isn't he?
I don't actually know.
I
I'd
think
say, like, I
that's
know obviously he's sweet robot dude with swords and stuff, but I just didn't know what actually Genji's aiming for there. Either way.
That's his official title. Sweet robot dude with swords.
Yeah.
Is this K1 Pro Genji?
I hope.
Me too.
I can tell you that's pretty hype. Even Mac, honestly, all of those players on a Genji makes me pretty excited. But I do agree with you. I think I would like to see K1 Pro the most. Not only for the role, but just it's any flashy character, K1 Pro, when he really figures them out, is a nuisance, is a light way to put it.
So what? Uther ban? Uther pick for Tempo Storm? If they don't want Genji to have Divine's Shield?
Yeah, it makes more sense to pick it up for themselves, especially with how many melees they kind of already got going. And their draft with Zarya, I can see them liking Malfurion purely based on the fact that they have Zarya.
BStep, if they want a global, are left now to Brightwing. Illidan with the hunt? Probably not with Genji already picked up. Zagara?
Or Zeratul is a pseudo attempt, right? Like being that, but that's more of a response when he fills that role usually, or it's with another global as well. So it's a good point you bring up. That is a very limited option to go, but the Ariel's banned out, not giving the trio over to Tempo. Zarya Ariel plus any kind of battery. I'm really excited to see where these next two picks of Tempo Storm go, because
as well.
They've left it rather open-ended, and BStep went a very different direction for their draft too. So just what is Tempo Storm's, interpretation to the response of what BStep has constructed here in this draft? It's every team's got their own answer, so it's always fun whenever we get to see Tempo to see their perspective, because if anybody at home has never gone through and looked at draft data, just literally the drafting on its own, you can see a lot of cool patterns and thoughts from teams depending on their history and what they've done. It's really neat.
Well, BStep will get Genji, but they will not get any sort of invulnerability for him. Uther, Divine Shield, stolen. Tyrael, stolen. The
weird thing is I was actually going to talk about, we all, every time Genji's come up so far, I talk about Tyrael and Uther are the only two times that I see him and I'm like, I'm afraid of him. Every other time I'm like, bad Tracer. So denying both of those is huge, but I was going to say Tempo could try to, but I didn't think they would, because not only are they going with this melee Cassia composition, that's not the thing that makes me go, I don't know if I like this. It's more the fact that they don't have any damage through any of their sources right now. Uther is very, very low outside of D-Storm. Judgment maybe, it's just they're lacking in the damage department when we typically, compared to the normal composition Tempo Storms run, and with this type of heavy melee draft, there's more DPS, more beef in there somewhere.
Yeah, though, when they ran Triple Warrior before, oh!
She came out.
When they ran Triple Warrior before, it was Johanna, Dahaka, and Zarya.
You're not wrong. It was equally as, all over the place as this one.
But it was full globals, right? So it was against a lacking of that type of
Yes,
full
when your
team fight
opponent
too.
doesn't commit to a team fight and then you kind of half commit to it as well, and they don't accent those globals that you're kind of talking about right here. Yeah, it is a different way to look at that composition. Last pick for Tempo. What warrior is it going to be?
Could be a warrior, but it could be
go with
some
the
sort of
Illidan,
change,
man.
and they are going to get
They're
Illidan.
going to mix it up.
I wonder if that pick was because Zagara was picked, or if they already had planned to go down this route.
That one I don't know. It could have been either way. You're right with how the draft played out. Like, it could have either direction. I do think the Zagara kind of conveniently sold the Illidan, on what would have been more questionable. And now there's about 50 different ways that Tempo can approach this draft. They've got an anti-global into a Zag, and multiple anti-globals. They've got a lot of single target bursts they can move into, or they can go more AoE survivability death ball.
I love how they approached it because they have 2 Cassia players. They have several Zarya players, 2 that we have seen so far. They have several Tyrael players. Obviously, June is going to play the Uther, but everything else, they could have worked it in a way so that they were so flexible with that final pick. I love how they did that, whether it was that they were always going to play Illidan or regardless. But it's time to head into the game, as we are on Cursed Hollow for Game 3. This is it for B-Step. Stay in the series. They got to win this one.
Also, we already see K1 Pro is going to be the Zagara player, but changing up the level 1 a little bit. We have seen multiple level 1s out of Zag, but going into the Banelings rather than the Infest there. iDream is the Genji.
Nice. Still psyched. Still pumped.
Still stoked. All right, and then so when looking at the flexing of the other half, we do have Fury is going to be the Tyrael, and then Cawthon is the Zarya.
Some awesome Tyrael plays from Fury last week, too, versus Gale Force Esports. Still a possibility for Judgment, or you think it will be Sanctification again from Fury?
So, again, this is one of the few comps Tempo can legitimately go in both ways. It just comes down to how they want to play it, and they don't have to decide until 10. Because Tempo, they know what B-Step wants to do in this game for a lot of the part. Their team fight is going to be, we poke around with Chromie on top of an objective. When it gets low, Genji goes in, commits to the kill, and Zag's been split-soaking the entire time. Isn't that fun? And when you commit to, you saw the Cassia, the Zarya, the Tyrael, and the Uther, you don't think of that as like, there's no last pick that is an anti-split pusher, right? And that's why that Illidan is so creative, because now that watch Zagara do her thing while our 4-man delays and maybe gets a pick here and there isn't a realistic option for the later half of the game now. Tempo Storm could go Judgment and go Hunt. And what they can do is they can not only hunt Zagara, but in team fights they can hunt Genji. Genji will Judgment, Genji dashes away, Illidan follows up. That is likely a kill.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of too. Judgment can lock Genji down, whereas where teams have had trouble doing that before because of all of the mobility options that he has.
And so when you're trying to counter a composition, you never want to do it in a overly straightforward manner, right? Because if your counter to a composition is as straightforward as a bad composition can be, one that's less flexible, less diverse in its way to win the game, it's equally easy to beat. So suddenly when Tempo not only has a counter, but it's not as straightforward. It's not the direct into the team fight. It's not, we're going to pick you. It's, we can flex it. And then we have multiple targets. If we do dive, APM getting caught out and picked off. Even if they do dive and they commit to this single target blow up, they can do that anti-Zagara, anti-Genji, it's just anti-Chromie. It suddenly becomes way more appealing, which is why I'm not counting out the Judgment option in this game. It's one of the few where I'm like, it's up to you. Whatever you're feeling, whatever you think you're likely going to experience the most.
Whatever Tempo Storm's heart desires is possible in this game for Tempo. And so far, they have been doing remarkably well. Again, in the early game, they've taken out towers. They haven't taken down a fort yet, but they've opened up a lot of forts, whereas there's just the one taken down for B-Step, looking to try to get as much structural damage done before Zagara comes online at 10 with Nidus Network. North America continuing to reinvent the wheel with their Chromie builds. This time, still a full Dragon's Breath build, except for level 1 to give vision. My apologies, I have broken my co-commentator, so I will continue to cast until he is ready to rejoin this.
Reinventing the wheel. You're not wrong. That's why it's so very good. We don't stop there. It's all the way down to Malfurion. Cattle gets the interrupt, but we've got ourselves a Treant coming out with our vengeful roots.
Broccoli build.
Let's go, boys. B-Step's not playing around this game.
So McIntyre will have more Dragon's Breaths that have a bigger area, but he's not building into the damage of level 1. Still wanting to get the ability power and the vision that Time Walker's Pursuit brings to him.
I apologize. I've just never heard it so eloquently put. it really is. We are attempting to reinvent the wheel when it comes to Chromie.
Just that
Europe started
build.
it. We made sure we finished it. You know what I mean? They were like, is it Chromie cool? And they're like, whoa. Let us show you how wacky these talents can get here. Anything and everything's an option if you got Chromie. I mean, the girl can see future and past. She's got it. You can't misclick a talent in that case.
And we had the other build that was full Dragon's Breath from Kenma, aka what I saw on Twitter, Ken1 Pro, which I adored.
The Ken 1 Pro.
I also saw Kenne, like Kenma and Mene.
Oh, Kenne. I like that one for that, you know, the new Mage Master.
Broccoli doing a lot of damage to Cattle, but now he's going in trying to get the kill. That's the bouncing attacks, but somehow King Caffeine stays alive.
Cattle actually could have gotten that kill and he didn't. So what we saw there was the bouncing attacks coming out from the level 1 on Cassia. And so Caff was actually out of auto attack range and you saw him chasing. He could have auto attacked the Malfurion. Later he did, but it got enough time for Caff to get his W and shielded the splash auto attack damage that could have killed him. So if he had accepted his fate that he had no auto attack onto the kill target, swapped in the Malfurion a smidge earlier, that could have been a pick. So
small things here, doesn't get a kill, but does do a lot of damage, significant damage to B-Step, which is also what has happened to B-Step structures. No 4 in mid, 4 in bot is low, and importantly, they have kept Zagara back from being able to split push or even just try to get her creep spread out to get ready for getting Nidus Network set up and active.
Tempo Storm, channel number 2 complete. They've got their level advantage. Invade onto Psalm. He's can Q over the wall if he needs to. He doesn't actually have to run this way. Gets the Fury, Smite, heals down the line from June, but he's gonna be fine. But Tempo, I don't really know what happened. But Tempo has not only got a level lead, Gilly, they've got 2 tribs on top. No contesting out of B-Step, very little. This shouldn't have happened in this game. There's no reason for this to be as bad as it is. It's a weird comp from B-Step, but not a I lost an entire level pre-10 on Cursed Hollow.
What is happening top lane with B-Step?
They're flanking. Getting the old gank. They're going for a moment to see if they could get anything up there with the counter siege, and oftentimes you flank around the boss to get a gank onto anybody up there, but Fury must have scouted it, was just a bit more patient, and was just like, hey, I see you guys, and not only that, he's definitely not dying to that gank.
They used the Treant
10.
to take some of the shots away. Now it's going to be back there again, catches the root, but Psalm will just hunt his way on to APM, and he's gone.
Now they have Curse, 10 advantage for a long while, and Tempo Storm's going to boss. To be honest, they don't even have to capture the tribute yet, and Anubarak actually delayed, so they don't realize the boss is being taken, and delaying the tribute gives more free time that a boss is pushing with a tribute. So a bit of counterintuitive, 2-man stun coming out from the boss, uncharacteristic of Tempo. McIntyre now knows the boss has started. They don't have 10s yet though, so it doesn't really matter.
There's just slowing sands for Chromie. Oh, and she gets caught. Cattle fins around the wall. Nearly gets some damage McIntyre, but all of B-Step is here to defend.
So what we did see, Tempo Storm decided to do a bit of a hybrid of what I was talking about before. They go with the Hunt, but then they go with Sync. So not all inning, but they still have the counter global with the Illidan, with the Hunt there. Probably the safest route.
Divine Shield 2 to add to that. They've got Valkyrie, so once they take down this gate, there's the possibility of trying to pull somebody in to this boss, into the stuns, into all of Tempo Storm.
It can only be Zagara, Malfurion, or Chromie for now. Later on, it only becomes Zagara. They go in, the Hunt on to APM. Divine Shield's going to be dropped. They back out, some more focus onto the keep. There's the Cocoon. One fend allows June to get right out of there.
And that pushed back B-Step just long enough to get damage down to know that the boss will take out this keep. So one keep already down 8 minutes into this game. Heroic abilities are here. Cocoon, we saw that one. Everything else standard. It's Nidus Network for Zagara. So damage report. Tempo Storm nearly to 13. 2-level lead over B-Step on Cursed Hollow. One keep taken out for B-Step. They only have one fort left in the top, albeit a healthy one.
Damage report is going to get worsened here by the boss started by Tempo Storm. Very easy with the 13 talents here. They can get this boss. This is one of the few early game bosses that Tempo Storm should end up pushing with, and if they don't, they're going to push mid keep wall. Tempo Storm traditionally is more on the safe route. This is one of the few situations their comp can win the game if they get any kills early on at all, to where I like pushing with this boss because you can legitimately win. But Tempo traditionally, they play safer. They like taking out keep front walls rather than risking a could this be game type decision. But they seem bored. They're not messing around with it. They're going to stack giants on top. They're pushing pressure towards the fort on top. They're definitely saying we want to keep, but I can't tell if they're committing all the way to the core at least yet. Illidan's still up on mid.
Boss and Zarya in top, Giants taken, and that slows down the defense for B-Step. B-Step have Zagara in the bottom. What's up?
They're committing to mid now. You see this rotation. They're going the safe route, but it's just like 30 seconds late. That's the kind of stuff that, for Tempo Storm, that's all I have left a lot of the times when it comes to complaints, is that it's more of like, you have two options. I think one is slightly riskier but better. I can understand why you don't do it, but when they commit to one or the other, it just feels sometimes, you know, where was this a bit ago? Illidan has been getting the side soak, and Tempo Storm isn't losing any major advantage, but they also aren't forcing the same way. They now have the boss up on top that's being responded to, which is where they should all in through mid. But instead play more passive, waiting for, again, the 16 talent tier.
They still have a 3-level lead, and now they have Spell Barrier for Zarya, which is a lot of making sure that she can sustain through the damage of Chromie. Chromie has time out, should help somewhat with Illidan too, but his primary focus is and has continued to be Zagara.
That fend. I've never seen that one. That's about the longest of you know, wild, crazy things. And I feel like we're only going to get more.
Cassia's our new variant.
Well, now that we've got Genji into the game, because his is so fast that a lot of point-and-click follow-throughs like that, you know, I haven't seen a Diablo Shadow Charge yet, but I'm sure it can only look horrific as he is falling through Genji there.
Tempo Storm, all but taking out B-Step.
That's about best way to put it. 3-0 in kills, 3-level lead advantage, and not a single tribute gone over to B-Step. Both bosses obtained by Tempo Storm. Really, the only thing Tempo could have done a little bit better in this game to make it more lopsided into their favor is they could have asked their minions not to spawn to give B-Step experience, and that's about it.
16 to 13. Do they use this 16 to, they will use it to drop a variant spray. Important. Also important is taking down more keeps, making this a no-win situation for B-Step.
So they want to see the bottom giants and mid-pressure be timed evenly, which they have. And now that Zag has responded to bottom with 16 talents here, I'm amazed Illidan doesn't hunt mid and just win, right? Like, they have Sancts, they've got Divine Shield, and they have an Illidan with a global. I'm just really amazed Tempo Storm. They're side-soaking, they're risking the 3-mana mid, and they're getting the tribute. Yes, they're winning on all fronts, but they also aren't taking anything. They're literally just handing over experience to B-Step in this game right now. And this is the criticism I have towards a lot of North American teams, but Tempo is by far the best at forcing problems.
This might help. Especially if they can wipe B-Step, they won't even need the boss.
They really want to fight, and they only want to fight though if B-Step's willing to give it to them. That's the weirdest thing. Tempo Storm, this is the third decision that they've made where it's like, can we get a fight out of this? But when a fight is even kind of thrown in front of them whatsoever, Illidan's still side-soaking. They've got that, you know, they're looking for this more split push pressure out of the Illidan in the long run. They have such a everybody press R composition that I really felt they would be more comfortable taking these type of fights, but they're just not gonna.
Yeah, it seems like it's a combo, like a mix of two different styles of play that they're trying to integrate together. They still want to have the split push, but they have this dominant team fighting comp too, where they're like, well, I guess if B-Step will fight us, then we'll fight and Illidan can hunt in, and otherwise he'll continue to push. Now B-Step has started their boss. They still are a level away from 16.
They're gonna lose a curse, and then they're gonna get hunted on. B-Step, there's the curse moving up. Now it's only a matter of time. There's keeps pressure on bottom, keep pressure up on top. Zag is still showing herself, and 16's not here. That's when they force. First Holy Ground, not as effective as maybe wanted. And Tempo Storm now takes their boss.
Illidan still hanging out in mid, not going to show up in that or at the boss until he absolutely has to. Again, trying to just force a checkmate for B-Step.
The one thing that Tempo Storm is kind of doing right now, they are playing obviously a really fun like macro game that Illidan is just being a problem the entire time in this game. But the one reason why I often harp on this playstyle is just mainly we aren't forcing like that keep with the 16 talent tier and things of such, is what we see now, right? The gap used to be 3.5 levels, and now it's sitting at that 2.5, and it's only going to get less and less and less, and that is largely because Tempo Storm is looking for side soak, and they aren't forcing any objective. They're just getting the soak from the minions itself, but more importantly, what does happen here is that the gap between 16 and 20 is significantly, like, insanely larger than every other gap in talent tier. So this fight's almost inevitable, and so when you get it, you want to be rounding 20, always. And the only way to do that is through amplifying those objectives there in that mid game. Otherwise, Tempo always allows B-Step to do the very end game, but one Holy Ground Sanctification.
Perfect play from Fury, steals away the boss. Two bosses now. Valkyrie pulls in APM, who gets hunted. Ice blocks for now, stunned out of Twilight Dream to boot. Nothing going APM's way. And Tempo Storm trying to close out the game after a steady mid-game from them.
I don't even think they have to right-click the core. There's just no way this game does not end. A boss stopping on through top keep, a boss through bottom keep. One still from Fury is, you know, it was the cherry on top of this series. Tempo Storm have found themselves game number 3, ending HGC North America phase number